Sir, I know the girl in that portrait. 8 words. 8 words that would shatter a billionaire's world and rewrite the ending of 3 broken arts. A janitor, a mansion, a face frozen in time on a wall, and a woman 1,000 miles away who didn't know her own name. Some people say fate is just coincidence dressed up in fancy clothes, but when a single father who couldn't afford a plane ticket ends up standing in front of a portrait of a woman he's known for years, a woman the whole world had been searching for, you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the universe has a plan after all. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Bryce Hartley's hands trembled as he stood frozen in the hallway of the Monroe estate, his tool bag slipping from his shoulder and hitting the marble floor with a dull thud that echoed through the empty corridor. The portrait was massive, at least 5 feet tall, professionally painted in oils that caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A young woman in a red dress, perhaps 21, with hazel eyes that seemed to follow him, blonde hair cascading past her shoulders, and a smile that was somehow both confident and gentle. But it was the small details that had stopped his heart. The exact way she tucked her hair behind her left ear, the tiny scar above her right eyebrow, barely visible but definitely there. The distinctive tilt of her head when she smiled, like she was sharing a secret. "Alina," he whispered, the name escaping his lips before he could stop it. But that was impossible. Completely, utterly impossible. His pulse hammered in his ears. He took a step closer to the portrait, squinting at the brass nameplate mounted below the ornate frame. Hannah Monroe, 2018. The woman in this painting was supposed to be the missing daughter of Griffin Monroe, the tech billionaire whose mansion Bryce was currently standing in. The daughter who had vanished 7 years ago without a trace, whose disappearance had made national headlines, whose father had offered $1 million reward that had never been claimed. Because the woman in this portrait, this Hannah Monroe, was currently working in the gift shop at Mercy General Hospital in Brookville, 1,000 miles from here. She'd been there for 7 years, living in the long-term care facility, with no memory of who she'd been before the accident that had nearly killed her. They called her Alina because she had no other name, no identification, no past, just a blank slate where a life used to be. And Bryce had spent countless nights talking with her, laughing with her, falling for her in the quiet, careful way you fall for someone when you're both too broken to rush into anything. "Is something wrong?" The voice came from behind him, sharp with concern. Bryce spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance. Griffin Monroe stood in the doorway of what appeared to be a study, dressed in an expensive sweater and slacks. Sir, Bryce's mouth went completely dry. "The woman in this portrait, I know her."
The change in Griffin Monroe was instantaneous and terrifying. His face went from polite concern to something fierce and desperate in the space of a single heartbeat. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides and grabbed Bryce's arm with surprising strength. "What did you say?" Griffin's voice was barely above a whisper, but it vibrated with 7 years of grief and hope and desperation. "I know her," Bryce repeated, his own voice shaking. "She's at the hospital where I work, back in Brookville. She's been there for 7 years. Griffin's legs seemed to give out. He stumbled backward, one hand reaching for the wall to steady himself. His face had gone completely white. "Brookville? That's almost 1,000 miles from here. If you're lying to me—" "I'm not lying," Bryce said quickly. "I swear I'm not. She goes by Alina because she doesn't remember her real name. She doesn't remember anything from before 7 years ago. She was in an accident, found unconscious by the roadside. Severe head trauma. She was in a coma for almost a year. When she woke up, she had no memory, no ID. The hospital tried everything to identify her, but there were no matches." "Because I was looking in all the wrong places," Griffin said, his voice breaking. Tears were streaming down his face now. He pressed both hands against his face, his shoulders shaking.
"How do you know her?" Griffin asked, looking up. "How well do you know my daughter?" Bryce felt heat creep up his neck. "I work at Mercy General. I'm a janitor there. I've been working nights for 6 years, and she works in the hospital gift shop. We became friends. She has trouble sleeping sometimes, so she wanders the halls at night, and we'd talk, for hours." Griffin was studying his face with an intensity that made Bryce want to squirm. "You care about her," Griffin said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Bryce admitted. "I do. We both do. My daughter Noelle and I." "Tell me everything," Griffin said. And there was such raw need in his voice that Bryce couldn't have refused. "Tell me about my daughter." They moved into Griffin's study, and Bryce settled into one of the leather chairs, beginning to talk. He told Griffin about meeting Alina 5 years ago, about their late-night conversations, about how she'd been rebuilding a life from nothing. "She's been at Mercy General this whole time?" Griffin asked, his voice hollow. "For 7 years, she's been less than 1,000 miles away?" "The timing matches. She was found 7 years ago this spring. April, I think." Griffin reached for a photo album on his desk and opened it to a specific page. The photo showed Hannah standing in front of a university building, laughing. She looked happy, free. "This was taken 3 weeks before she disappeared," Griffin said quietly. "She'd just finished her junior year. She was studying education, wanted to be a teacher. I told her she was wasting her degree, that she should get an MBA, come work for me. We fought about it constantly." "What happened the night she left?" Bryce asked gently. Griffin's face twisted with pain. "We had dinner. I'd prepared a presentation about why business school was the logical next step. She listened to the whole thing, then looked me in the eye and said, 'Dad, I love you, but I'm not going to live your life. I'm going to live mine.' I said terrible things, told her she was naive, that she didn't understand how the real world worked. She walked out." He pulled out a piece of lined notebook paper. The handwriting was feminine and neat. "Dad, I need to find my own way. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not in your shadow. This isn't about not loving you. This is about loving myself enough to choose my own path. I'll call you when I'm ready. Hannah." She left that on her bed. Took her car, some clothes, maybe $2,000. The car was found at a rest stop, about 300 miles from here. After that, nothing. "She must have been trying to get far away," Bryce said softly. "And somewhere along that route, she had an accident. Maybe she'd sold the car, she was smart, would have known I could track it, and then something happened and there was no one who knew who she was." The two men sat in silence for a moment. "She's been rebuilding from scratch, learning how to be in the world without any framework. She taught herself to read again. She takes painting classes. The hospital staff loves her. My daughter, Noelle, absolutely adores her."
"You have a daughter," Griffin said. 7 years old. I'm a single dad. My wife passed away from a brain aneurysm 6 years ago." Understanding dawned in Griffin's eyes. "So you both know what it's like to lose someone." "Yeah, maybe that's part of why we connected." Griffin stood abruptly and walked to the window. "I need to see her immediately. I'll arrange a flight." "Sir," Bryce interrupted gently, "we should prepare her first. This will be overwhelming. I can call her tonight. You could fly out tomorrow." Griffin turned to face him. "Will you come with me? I'll cover everything. Flights, accommodation, whatever you need. Please, she trusts you." "My daughter is with me, sir. She's 7. Bring her. Bring everyone. I don't care about the cost. You're bringing my daughter back to me." And that's when Bryce realized he hadn't explained why he was in Riverside in the first place. "I should probably explain," Bryce said, "why I'm here at all." So he told Griffin about the phone call 5 days ago, his sister Margaret, her voice cracking with grief, her husband Robert, dead at 42 from a massive heart attack. "I'm so sorry," Griffin said quietly. "Margaret is in Riverside. She needed family, so I told her we'd come, Noelle and I. We'd stay the week, help with funeral arrangements." But you couldn't afford plane tickets. Not on short notice, no. So we took the train. 18 hours, 3 transfers. Noelle kept asking why we couldn't fly like the people on TV. I told her trains were an adventure.
Were they? They were exhausting. We ate peanut butter sandwiches and shared a single bottle of juice. Noelle slept across my lap while I stayed awake. Other passengers would look at us, a tired guy in patched work clothes, with a little girl in a mended dress. "But you made the trip anyway," Griffin said softly. "She's my sister. Of course I did. The problem was the return trip. I'd used most of my savings for the train tickets. I needed to work. And then Margaret mentioned that the Monroe estate needed emergency electrical work. My dad was an electrician. I grew up helping him. At the hospital, when something in the wiring acts up, they call me. It brings in a little extra money." "So you came here just to earn train tickets home," Griffin said slowly. "And instead you found my daughter." "Yeah, I guess I did." Griffin was quiet for a long moment. "If Robert hadn't died, you never would have needed to come to Riverside. If I hadn't had that electrical emergency, you never would have been in this house. If you hadn't walked down that hallway at that moment, Hannah would still be lost," Bryce finished quietly. "And I would still be searching," Griffin's voice broke. "Finish your electrical work. I'll pay you triple. And then please, help me bring my daughter home." Bryce completed the electrical work in a daze, his mind spinning with the impossibility of what he'd discovered. Every time he passed one of Hannah's portraits, he saw Elena's face superimposed over it. He thought about all those nights at the hospital, talking with her in the empty corridors, the way she'd confessed that she sometimes felt like a ghost, untethered from the world, the way she'd once told him that the worst part wasn't not knowing who she'd been, it was wondering if anyone out there was still looking for her. "Someone is," he whispered to an empty hallway. "Someone never stopped." When he returned to Margaret's house that evening, Noelle ran to meet him, her brown curls bouncing and her dress dusted with flour. "Daddy, we made cookies. I saved you the biggest one." He caught her up in his arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her shampoo, grounding himself in this moment before everything changed. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her eyes still swollen but managing a small smile. "How was the job?" she asked. "Margaret," Bryce said quietly, "I need to borrow your phone. I need to make a long-distance call." After Noelle was tucked into bed with her stuffed rabbit, Bryce sat in Margaret's kitchen with his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. "Just call her," Margaret said gently. Bryce picked up the phone and dialed the familiar number from Mercy General's long-term care facility. The night nurse answered on the third ring. "Long-term care, this is Patricia." "Hi, Patricia, it's Bryce Hartley. Is Alina still awake? Could I speak with her?" "Oh, Bryce! She'll be so glad to hear from you. Hold on." There was shuffling and muffled voices. Then, "Bryce?" Her voice hit him like a physical force. "Hey, Alina. How are you?" "I'm okay. I thought you were away for the week. How's your sister?" "She's managing. Listen, Alina, I need to tell you something. Something I discovered today." The smile faded from her voice. "You sound serious. Is everything all right?" "I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to say it straight." He took a deep breath. "I found out who you are. I found your family." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. "Alina? Are you still there?" "I'm here." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you say?" "Your real name is Hannah. Hannah Monroe. You disappeared 7 years ago after a fight with your father. You were trying to find your own path, and somewhere along the way you had an accident. Your father, Griffin Monroe, he's been searching for you this entire time. He never stopped looking." He heard her breathing change, becoming rapid and shallow.
How do you know this? I'm in Riverside right now. I was doing electrical work at a mansion, and there were portraits everywhere. And one of them was you. Exactly you. Same eyes, same smile, even the same scar. The timeline matches. Everything matches. I have a father? She voice broke. I have family? Yes. And he wants to see you. He wants to come to Brookville, but I told him we should prepare you first. I can't. I don't. She was crying now. Bryce, I'm scared. What if I meet him and I don't remember? Then you'll figure it out together, Bryce said firmly. He doesn't want Hannah from 7 years ago. He wants to know the person you are now. And you're pretty amazing.
You're coming back, right? The vulnerability in her voice nearly broke him. When he comes, you'll be there? I'll be right there with you, I promise. Okay, she said quietly. Tell him I want to meet him. Tell him I want to know where I came from. I will. Try to get some sleep. Bryce? Yeah? Thank you. For finding me. For giving me back something I didn't even know I'd lost. After he hung up, Bryce sat with his head in his hands. Margaret put a hand on his shoulder. This woman, she's important to you, isn't she? Yeah, Bryce admitted. She is. The next morning, Griffin Monroe's private jet sat gleaming on the tarmac. Noelle pressed her face against the car window as Margaret drove them to the private airfield. Daddy, is that ours? She breathed. Not ours, sweetie. Mr. Monroe is letting us borrow it. Griffin was waiting at the entrance, dressed in casual clothes but looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he was clutching a leather-bound photo album. Thank you for coming, Bryce said. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Then he crouched down to Noelle's level. And you must be Noelle. Your daddy's told me wonderful things about you. Noelle, suddenly shy, hid behind Bryce's leg. Are you Miss Alina's father? Griffin's breath caught. Yes, I am. She's really nice, she said seriously. She gives the best hugs, and she always has strawberry candies. And one time, when I was sad because I missed my mommy, she sat with me for a whole hour and told me stories about birds.
Did she? Griffin's voice was thick. She always loved birds when she was little. Maybe she remembers a little bit, Noelle said hopefully. In her heart, even if her brain forgot. Griffin looked up at Bryce with tears in his eyes. Your daughter is wise beyond her years. The flight to Brookville was surreal. Noelle sat by the window watching the clouds. Griffin sat across from Bryce, the photo album open, showing pictures and telling stories about Hannah's childhood. This was her 8th birthday, Griffin said. She insisted on having it at the animal shelter, said she'd rather spend her birthday with lonely dogs than show off. That sounds like her, Bryce said with a smile. As they descended into Brookville, Griffin's hands started shaking. Bryce reached over and put a hand on his arm. She's a good person, Bryce said quietly. Whatever happens, you should know that your daughter grew up to be someone truly special. I just want her to know she's loved, that she's always been loved. Mercy General Hospital looked different through Griffin Monroe's eyes. Bryce simply followed him through the familiar corridors with Noelle's hand in his, the photo album still clutched under Griffin's arm. They found Alina in the gift shop, arranging stuffed animals. She had her back to them, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, humming something soft. Alina, Bryce said gently. She turned and her face lit up when she saw him. Then her gaze shifted to Griffin, and her smile faltered, replaced by something uncertain. Hi, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Griffin stepped forward slowly, like he was afraid of spooking her. Up close, the resemblance was unmistakable. Hannah, Griffin breathed, tears already falling. My beautiful Hannah, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the fight. For the words I said. For not finding you sooner. I want to remember, she said, her voice breaking. But it's like looking through frosted glass. Everything is blurry. It's okay, Griffin said, crying openly. It's okay, sweetheart. We have time now. You don't have to remember. You just have to be here, alive, safe.
"But I want to remember," Hannah said desperately. "I want to know where I came from, who I was supposed to be. I've been so lost." "You're not lost anymore," Griffin interrupted gently. "You're found, and I'm so sorry for every single day you've had to struggle alone." Bryce felt his own eyes burning. He looked down to find Noelle staring up at him, her face scrunched with emotion. "Daddy, why are they crying?" she whispered. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy to. When something really, really good happens after something really, really bad." Noelle walked over to where Griffin and Hannah stood. She tugged on Hannah's sleeve. "Miss Alina." Hannah pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Hi, sweetie." Noelle held out a slightly squashed cookie from her pocket. "When I'm sad, cookies help," she said solemnly. "Maybe they'll help you remember too."
Hannah laughed through her tears. She took the cookie with reverent care. "Thank you, Noelle. You're absolutely right. Cookies fix everything." Griffin crouched to Noelle's level. "Thank you for taking care of my daughter, you and your father both. Miss Alina takes care of us too," Noelle said matter-of-factly. "That's what families do." The word hung in the air. Families. Over the following weeks, the situation unfolded with beautiful complexity. Griffin extended his stay in Brookville, taking a suite at the Riverside Inn, and spent every day at the hospital with Hannah. He brought photo albums, told stories, shared videos. Slowly, with the help of specialists he'd flown in, fragments of memory began to surface. "I remember a Christmas tree," Hannah said one afternoon. "A huge one with white lights and music, Bing Crosby, and someone laughing." "Your mother," Griffin said softly. "She loved Bing Crosby. That was our last Christmas together before she passed. You were 15. "I remember her laugh," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. But the memories were unpredictable. She remembered her mother, but not her college years. Remembered learning to ride a bike, but not graduating high school. "It's like having puzzle pieces with no picture to follow," she told Bryce one evening in the cafeteria. "I don't know what fits where. Maybe you don't need the original picture. Maybe you can make a new one with the pieces you have." She smiled at him, that same warm smile he'd fallen for years ago. "When did you get so wise?" Eventually, Griffin's business demanded his return to Riverside. "Come home with me," he said to Hannah one morning. "You'll have access to the best doctors. Your old room is exactly as you left it." Hannah looked at Bryce when she answered, "I want to try. I want to know that life, to see if being in those spaces helps the memories come back. But this is scary. Brookville has been my only known home for 7 years. Then visit any time. Or better yet, maybe your friends could visit you. The jet is always available."
The day they took Hannah to the airport was one of the hardest of Bryce's life. She hugged him tightly in the terminal. "You saved me," she whispered. "Twice now." "You saved yourself," he replied. "I just helped you find the way home." "Bryce, go," he said gently. "Go figure out who Hannah Monroe is. Go get to know your father. You deserve all of it." "What if I want something else?" she asked, her eyes shining. But Noelle was tugging on his hand, and Griffin was waiting, and the moment passed. The months that followed were the longest of Bryce's life. Every evening, after Noelle went to bed, he'd dial Hannah's number. They'd talk for hours. The doctors say the trauma locked the memories away as protection, but they're coming back now, good ones and bad ones. "How are things with your father?" "Better, different. We're both changed people. He's learned to listen, and I've learned that running doesn't solve everything. We're building something new." "I'm glad," Bryce said. "I miss you," Hannah said suddenly. "You and Noelle both. This house is beautiful, and my father is wonderful, but it's not—" "Not what?" "Not home," she finished quietly. Griffin flew Hannah to Brookville once a month. Those weekends became the highlight of Bryce's existence. Trips to the park with Noel, dinners at his apartment where Hannah insisted on cooking, long walks where they talked about everything.
"Daddy, why doesn't Miss Hannah just stay here?" Noel asked one Sunday after Hannah had left. They were doing dishes together. "It's complicated, sweetie." "Adults always say that when they're being silly," Noel declared. "Miss Hannah is happy here. You're happy when she's here. I'm happy when she's here. So why doesn't she just stay?" "Because she has a life in Riverside now." "So are you going to tell Miss Hannah you love her, or are you going to keep being silly about it?" But weeks turned into months, and Bryce still couldn't find the courage to speak. Hannah was Griffin Monroe's daughter, heiress to a tech empire, a woman who could have anything she wanted. What did he have to offer? A janitor's salary, a one-bedroom apartment, a car held together with duct tape and prayer. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The breaking point came 6 months after Hannah had returned to Riverside. Bryce was doing his rounds at the hospital. It was nearly midnight when his phone rang. Hannah's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered. "Isn't it late there?" "Bryce," her voice was thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something." His heart sank. This was it. She'd met someone. It was inevitable. "Okay, what's going on?" "I got accepted," she said. Bryce frowned. "Accepted?" "To the teaching program at Brookville Community College. I applied months ago, full-ride scholarship. I start in January." The words took a moment to process. "You're coming back? To Brookville?" "If you want me to." Her voice was small now. "I know we've been dancing around this, but Bryce, I love you. I loved you before I knew who I was, and I love you now that I do. You and Noel, you're my real home. Not the mansion, not the money, just you."
Bryce couldn't breathe. "You love me? Is that really a surprise?" Hannah laughed. "You're the first thing I remember choosing for myself. When I had nothing, no name, no past, no future, I chose to sit with you in that chapel. I chose your friendship. And every day since, I've been choosing you." Hannah, she talked to my father about it, about wanting to be a teacher, about the program, about you. And do you know what he said? "What?" "He said he spent 7 years looking for me, and now that he'd found me, the last thing he wanted was to lose me again by trying to make me into something I'm not. He said if teaching in Brookville makes me happy, then that's where I should be. And if you make me happy, then he hopes I'm smart enough to not let you go. I'm a janitor. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I can't give you the life you could have." "I don't want that life," Hannah interrupted fiercely. "I tried running toward a different life 7 years ago, and look where it got me. I lost everything, and the only good thing that came out of it was finding you. So please don't tell me what life I should want. Let me choose, and I choose you." "So," Hannah said softly, "what do you say, Bryce Hartley? Can I come home?" "Yes," he said, his voice cracking. "Oh my, yes. Please come home." "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. I have for years. I was just too scared to say it." The wedding, exactly 1 year later, was held in 2 parts. First, a small ceremony in Brookville at the community center, where Hannah taught her after-school art program. The room was decorated with streamers and handmade decorations created by her students. Bryce stood at the makeshift altar in his best suit and watched Hannah walk down the aisle in a simple white dress. Noelle was the flower girl, spacing the petals exactly 2 inches apart. "Do you, Bryce Hartley, take Hannah Monroe to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," he said. "And do you, Hannah Monroe, take Bryce Hartley to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," she said. "I absolutely do."
When they kissed, the room erupted in cheers. Noel threw extra petals despite instructions not to. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely perfect. The second celebration happened a week later at the Monroe estate in Riverside. The garden had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. thousands of white lights strung through the trees, long tables laden with food, a live band playing on a stage decorated with flowers. Griffin walked Hannah down a garden aisle even though they were already married, his face glowing with joy. He kissed her cheek when he handed her to Bryce. Later, during the reception, Griffin stood to make a toast. 7 years ago, Griffin began, I lost my daughter because I thought I knew what was best for her. I thought success meant following a specific path. I was wrong. Success is being brave enough to choose your own path, even when it's scary. He turned to Bryce. You didn't just fix my electrical system that day, you gave me my daughter back. But more importantly, you gave her something I'd been too controlling to allow, the freedom to choose her own life, her own love, her own happiness. You loved her when she had nothing. You loved her when she was Alina with no past. You loved her without expecting anything in return. To Bryce and Hannah, Griffin raised his glass, may you always choose each other. May you build a life based on love instead of prestige. And may you never forget that the best journeys are the ones that bring us home. To Bryce and Hannah, the crowd echoed. Later, as the evening wound down, Bryce found himself standing at the edge of the garden with Hannah tucked under his arm. Noelle had fallen asleep on a bench nearby, still wearing her flower crown. Are you happy? Bryce asked softly. Hannah looked up at him. I'm more than happy. I'm home. In Riverside? No, she said, touching his cheek. Here. With you. This is home. Everything else is just a place.
Griffin approached them quietly. Thank you, he said to Bryce, for everything. For finding her, for loving her, for being the kind of man who values character over capital. Thank you for raising someone worth finding, Bryce replied. Griffin smiled. I'm setting up a college fund for Noelle. And before you protest, it's not charity, it's family. You're my family now. I like it, Bryce said quietly. I really, really like it. After Griffin left, Hannah and Bryce stood together, watching the last guests say their goodbyes. Do you ever think about it? Hannah asked. About how if just one thing had been different, if Robert hadn't died, if you'd been able to afford plane tickets, if Griffin's company hadn't canceled, we might never have found each other again? All the time, Bryce admitted. It's terrifying how close we came to missing this. But we didn't miss it, Hannah said firmly, because even when I didn't know my name, even when I couldn't remember where I came from, some part of me recognized you. Some part of me knew you were home. Hannah Hartley, Bryce said, testing out her full name. That's me, she said, smiling. The girl in the portrait who got lost and found herself, and found you too. No, Bryce corrected gently, not the girl in the portrait. The woman you became, that's who I fell in love with. Hannah pulled him down for a kiss, and somewhere in the distance, Noelle mumbled something about cookies in her sleep, and the string lights twinkled overhead, and everything was exactly as it should be. This story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, even when we don't know who we are or where we belong, hope can find us in the most unexpected places. Love doesn't require a perfect past or a guaranteed future. It just requires two people brave enough to choose each other. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters in life. Sometimes the longest journeys, the ones that stretch across miles and years and lost memories, lead us right where we're meant to be. Sometimes, against all odds, we find our way home. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are not defined by what you've lost or forgotten. You are defined by what you choose to do with the life you have right now. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.